Before we dive in, if you love epic tales of war, strategy, hit that subscribe and like button, turn on notifications, and join our growing legion of warriors. Now, let's begin. Imagine a warship so advanced, so impossibly lethal, that even the most battle-hardened admirals dismissed its existence as pure myth. A phantom vessel that defied physics, one that could not be detected, targeted, or destroyed. A ship that turned the tide of war in an instant, rewriting the very rules of interstellar combat. It wasn't supposed to exist. It was nothing more than a whisper among intelligence networks, a ghost story among spacers, until it arrived on the battlefield. The first time the Revenant-class dreadnought was deployed, the universe changed forever. The enemy never saw it coming. One moment, their unstoppable armada surged forward, ready to deal the killing blow to humanity's last defenders. The next, ships exploded in patterns that made no sense. Flagships crumbled as if struck by invisible forces. Whole squadrons vanished in an instant. And when the survivors searched for the source of the destruction, all they found was an empty, void, silent, uncaring, and merciless. This is the story of the warship that was never meant to exist, the impossible vessel that rose from secrecy to dominate the battlefield. But to understand how it came to be, we need to go back to the moment when humanity stood on the edge of extinction. The war that forged a legend. For centuries, humanity believed itself to be prepared for war. The United Earth Defense Council, UEDC, had spent generations perfecting its fleets. Powerful battleships, agile strike craft, and towering dreadnoughts, all equipped with the latest in railgun, plasma, and energy-based weaponry. But when the Kever Dominion arrived, all those carefully built defenses became meaningless. The Kever weren't just another alien empire. They were conquerors of civilizations, the architects of planetary genocide. They had existed long before humanity ever developed interstellar travel, expanding across the cosmos like an unstoppable plague. Their technology was beyond anything human engineers had ever encountered. Their warships bristled with directed energy, weapons that could slice through armor as if it were paper. Their defenses utilized layered shield harmonics that adapted in real time, rendering human projectiles and energy weapons ineffective. Their fleets moved in terrifying unison, commanded by AI war coordinators that predicted every tactical response, before human admirals could even issue an order. Every battle played out the same way. Human forces would form defensive lines, deploying their best strategies, their most powerful warships, and every time, they lost. Entire fleets were wiped from existence, their crews never even given the chance to retreat. The war was not a contest. It was an execution. By the time the UEDC realized the true scope of the threat, it was already too late. Entire colonies were burned from orbit. Refugee convoys were hunted down and obliterated. Military outposts went silent, one after another. Earth itself had become the last major stronghold, and even that would not last much longer. Humanity had exhausted every conventional strategy, every countermeasure, every last-ditch defense. They needed something new, something radical, something impossible. Project Revenant. The Black Project. In the depths of human desperation, the UEDC authorized one last gamble, a project so secret, so dangerous, that it was buried even from their own military command structure. Its name was Project Revenant. Unlike every warship designed before, this one would not rely on brute force or superior numbers. It would not simply outgun or outmaneuver the enemy. No. This warship would be designed to operate outside the very laws of traditional warfare. It would exist beyond the reach of detection, beyond the limitations of known physics. It would strike from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. The task was given to a hand-picked team of rogue scientists, experimental engineers, and disavowed theorists. People whose ideas had been dismissed as too radical, too dangerous. At the heart of this team was one man, Dr. Elias Voss. Voss was a name spoken with equal parts admiration and fear. A physicist who had spent decades studying quantum singularities, alternate space-time dimensions, and theoretical phase technology. Some called him a genius. Others called him insane. He had been expelled from multiple research institutions for conducting experiments that pushed too far into the unknown. But now, his ideas were humanity's last hope. The core concept behind Project Revenant was simple, and yet utterly revolutionary. Instead of relying on traditional shields or armor to survive, the ship would be designed to phase out of reality entirely, to exist in a state of quantum instability, shifting between dimensions, slipping between the cracks of space-time itself. This would allow it to evade all known forms of detection. No radar, no thermal tracking, no energy signatures. The ship simply would not exist in normal space until it chose to reappear. Bypass enemy defenses. Instead of trying to overpower the Kavar's impenetrable shields, it would ignore them completely, phasing directly through them and striking from within. Execute impossible maneuvers. In normal space, faster-than-light travel required complex calculations and preparation. The Revenant class, however, could shift from one location to another in an instant, attacking and repositioning with no warning. Of course, the biggest problem with such a design was that it should not have been possible. The energy requirements alone would have been astronomical. Every known attempt at phase-shifting ships had ended in catastrophic failure. Ships lost forever in the void, crews trapped in endless time loops, experimental reactors collapsing into miniature black holes. But then something changed, the discovery that shouldn't have been made. Deep in the ruins of an abandoned research station orbiting a dead star, a forgotten prototype was discovered, one that defied every known principle of engineering. It was an engine, but not like anything human scientists had ever seen before. It did not emit radiation. It did not consume fuel in any conventional sense. It simply existed, pulsing with an eerie, unidentifiable energy. And when it was activated, the ship it was attached to vanished from existence. Not cloaked, not hidden. Gone. For 6 minutes and 47 seconds, every sensor in the system reported nothing. And then, just as suddenly as it disappeared, the ship returned, completely intact. No one knew where it had gone. No one knew what it had experienced while it was missing. But one thing was certain. It worked. With this discovery, Project Revenant accelerated at an unprecedented rate. Resources poured in. Scientists abandoned every other military program to focus on this singular goal. The Revenant class was designed around this technology, integrating a fusion of quantum phase mechanics, predictive combat AI, and self-repairing molecular alloys that could adapt to damage in real time. Every record of its existence was erased. Every witness was silenced. The ship was constructed in the most isolated sector of space, hidden within a deep space anomaly where no known sensors could penetrate. And then, it was ready. The Revenant-class dreadnought was unlike anything that had ever been built. Its hull was dark, almost featureless, its surface shifting like liquid metal. It absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating an eerie, unnatural silhouette. Inside, it was a masterpiece of next-generation warfighting technology, designed for one purpose: to strike from the void and disappear before the enemy could respond. But no one knew if it would actually work in battle, and that answer would come soon enough. The Kavar Dominion had grown bolder, launching a full-scale invasion of humanity's last strongholds. Over 1,000 warships darkened the skies of Ardent Prime, Earth's final line of defense. The battle had already begun, and humanity was losing. That's when the Revenant-class dreadnought deployed for the first time. What happened next would go down in history as the moment war changed forever. For those on the battlefield, the moment was indistinguishable from sheer chaos. The skies above Ardent Prime burned as massive Kavar warships unleashed torrents of plasma and radiation, reducing entire city blocks to molten ruin. Earth's last great fleet, the 13th Defensive Armada, was locked in a losing battle. Its battleships, carriers, and destroyers fighting with every ounce of firepower they had, but it wasn't enough. The Kavar's superior technology had already decimated over 70% of the fleet. Humanity's last defenders were being crushed under the sheer weight of the invasion. And then, in the heart of the conflict, it happened. A ripple. A distortion in space. For less than a millisecond, a strange, unnatural void appeared at the edge of the battlefield. It was as if something hadn't just arrived, but had been there all along, simply waiting to reveal itself. Before anyone, could process what was happening. The Revenant-class dreadnought emerged. It didn't appear in a flash of light like conventional ships dropping from faster-than-light travel. It simply manifested, silent, unannounced, a midnight black silhouette against the burning wreckage of the battle. No signals, no energy readings, no identification codes. To both human and Kavar sensors, it did not exist. But what happened next would leave an imprint on history forever. The slaughter begins aboard. The Kavar Command Dreadnought, Admiral Vazek monitored the battlefield with absolute confidence. Victory was inevitable. Humanity had fought hard, but, like every species before them, they would fall. It was simply a matter of time. But then, something changed. One of his escort cruisers, an invulnerable vessel with layered shields and armor plating thicker than city walls, simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no energy discharge, no debris. One moment it was there, the next, it was gone. Confused, Vazek ordered a sensor sweep, only to find that another warship had vanished. Then another. Panic rippled through the Kavar fleet as a new horror unfolded. Their capital ships, the very backbone of their invasion, began to die. But not in any way they had ever seen before. Their destruction was almost surgical. Kavar warships that had once been unstoppable were suddenly ripped apart from the inside, their reactor cores detonating before their shields even registered a breach. Gun batteries melted as if subjected to impossible heat, turning into twisted, useless slag. Whole sections of ships disappeared, as if a blade had phased through solid matter, cutting them apart from within. And then, the real terror began. Through the wreckage, the Revenant class moved with impossible speed. But not through normal propulsion. It flickered, shifting from one location to another in an instant, appearing where no ship should have been able to go. It weaved through enemy formations without resistance, ignoring their defenses entirely. Every time it reappeared, another Kavar vessel died. Vazek barked orders, demanding target locks, but his officers gave him the same answer over and over again. There is no ship. We cannot detect it. Desperation gripped the Kavar fleet. Entire. Battleships turned their weapons on empty space, firing wildly at nothing. Their war AIs calculated thousands of attack patterns, but none accounted for an enemy that refused to exist in real space. The Revenant-class dreadnought wasn't a warship. It was a predator. The technology behind the impossible, as humanity's fleet watched in stunned silence, the Revenant class continued its one-ship massacre. The impossible nature of its attacks defied logic. But inside the ship, a fusion of bleeding edge, technology and human ingenuity made it all possible. At the heart of the Revenant class was the phase engine, a revolutionary power source derived from the mysterious prototype found in the ruins of the lost research station. This device did not function like any known FTL drive or quantum reactor. It manipulated space-time itself, allowing the ship to slip between dimensions. Here's what made it so devastating. Quantum phasing. The ship existed in an unstable state, shifting in and out of normal reality at will. It could appear inside an enemy vessel, phase in just long enough to fire weapons, and then vanish before retaliation was possible. Non-linear positioning. Unlike traditional ships, which had to travel through physical space, the Revenant class folded the battlefield around itself. It could move without inertia, jumping between microsecond gaps in space-time. Undetectability. Traditional sensors relied on electromagnetic signatures, energy emissions, and gravitational displacement. The Revenant class produced none of these. It did not reflect radar, generate heat, or create a gravity well. Even visual identification was nearly impossible. Its hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Adaptive warfare, AI. Unlike human commanders, who relied on tactical analysis and instinct, the Revenant class was guided by an advanced probability, matrix AI, capable of predicting enemy movements and phase shifting at the exact moment to avoid all incoming fire. But the Revenant wasn't just a marvel of engineering. It was an executioner. The fear spreads. The battle turns. As Kavar warships continued to fall, a chilling realization swept through their fleet. They were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. Panic set in. The Kivar, who had never known true fear in warfare, began to retreat. Entire formations abandoned their posts, their admirals realizing that no strategy could counter something that existed outside of their understanding. And then, the Revenant class did something that sealed the battle's fate. It spoke. Across all Kivar channels, in a voice distorted by the very nature of its existence, it issued a simple message. You are already dead. Aboard the Kivar Command Dreadnought, Admiral Vazek felt something he had never felt before. Terror. He turned to run, desperate to escape, to warn the rest of the Dominion that something beyond reason had entered the war. But as he reached for the controls, the lights on his ship flickered, the temperature dropped, the walls vibrated with an otherworldly hum. And then, he saw it. The shadow of something massive, something impossibly close, inside his ship. For one last moment, he understood. The Revenant class had already phased inside the command ship. It had been there for seconds, watching, waiting. Before he could even scream, Admiral Vazek and his entire dreadnought ceased to exist. Humanity's first true victory. With their leader gone, the Kivar fleet crumbled. Their once invincible ships, so terrifying in every battle, before turned and ran. For the first time in history, humanity had not just survived, it had won. But this was only the beginning. The Revenant-class dreadnought was no longer a myth. It was real. It was unstoppable. And soon, the entire galaxy would learn to fear it. The silence after the battle was eerie. The once chaotic battlefield, filled with explosions, desperate transmissions, and the screams of dying warriors, had become a graveyard of twisted metal and drifting wreckage. What remained of the Kivar fleet had fled beyond sensor range, abandoning their fallen without hesitation. The myth had become reality. But aboard the command ships of the 13th Defensive Armada, there was no immediate celebration. Every admiral, every captain, every strategist watching their holoscreens sat in stunned disbelief. They had won, but not by their own hands. They had witnessed something outside the realm of conventional warfare, something that had turned an unwinnable battle into an utter slaughter. And worst of all, they had no idea what the Revenant class truly was. The aftermath. No records, no traces. Admiral Elias Varon, the highest-ranking officer left in the fleet, immediately ordered a full sensor sweep. Every satellite, every probe, every remaining warship's long-range scanners searched for traces of the ship that had single-handedly turned the tide. There was nothing. No energy signatures, no hyperspace jump trails, no lingering radiation. The Revenant class had vanished, as if it had never been there in the first place. Even on the ship's black box recordings, strange anomalies appeared. Where there should have been footage of the Revenant in action, there were only corrupted files, bursts of static, and inexplicable voids of missing time. Some files even contained eerie distortions, visual glitches where shadow-like shapes flickered in and out, but never in any clear form. "Command, we've reviewed all battle logs," one officer reported. "All data on the unknown ship is either missing or unreadable. It's like the system doesn't know what to do with it." "That's impossible," Varon muttered. But it wasn't. The Revenant class wasn't just beyond human understanding. It actively defied technological observation. And for those who had seen it firsthand, the implications were terrifying. The origin of the Revenant, truth or fiction. In the days following the battle, classified discussions swept through high command. Humanity had faced war and destruction before, but never had it seen a force that operated outside of known science. The Revenant class was beyond stealth technology, beyond advanced engineering. It was something that defied logic itself. Rumors spread like wildfire among the military elite. Some believed the ship was an ancient artifact, a relic from a lost civilization far more advanced than humanity or the Kivar. Others whispered that it was the result of a failed Black Ops experiment, something the Terran government had once created and then abandoned, because they couldn't control it. One theory, however, was more unsettling than the rest. Deep in the classified records of human history There were reports of a secret project known only as Project Revenant. Supposedly, the project had been shut down over 2 centuries ago, after researchers at a hidden military station discovered something they weren't meant to find. The details were sparse, but the key points were chilling. The project was focused on quantum phasing technology, an experimental concept that allowed matter to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The lead scientists disappeared without explanation, and the facility was permanently sealed. The only existing test of the technology resulted in the complete erasure of an entire moon-sized research station. Official records claimed the project was a failure, buried and forgotten. But what if it wasn't? What if the Revenant class was the last remaining product of that experiment? A war machine so powerful, so unpredictable, that it was deemed too dangerous to be used in any known war. What if, when humanity faced annihilation, it simply awoke the unspoken message? Was it protecting humanity, even as the Terran government denied all knowledge of the ship? Certain disturbing patterns emerged. Survivors from the 13th Defensive Armada began reporting strange incidents. Those who had been closest to the Revenant class during battle experienced bizarre, unexplainable phenomena. Distorted memories, vivid recollections of moments that had never happened. Unnatural dreams, visions of vast, unknowable space, where time and gravity seemed meaningless. An overwhelming sensation of being watched, even in empty rooms, even when alone. But most disturbing was the realization that, despite its terrifying power, the Revenant class had not harmed a single human vessel it could have. Its technology was beyond anything humanity had ever seen. If it had wanted to, it could have phased through every ship in the fleet, erasing them from existence as easily as it had destroyed the Kavar dreadnoughts. But it didn't. Instead, it only attacked the Kavar. It chose a side. But why? Was it truly a human creation? Or was it something else, something older, something that had simply decided, for reasons unknown, that humanity should live? The galactic response, fear and uncertainty, word of the battle spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, species that had once viewed humanity as a weak, expendable race reassessed their stance. The Kavar Dominion, humiliated and crippled, enacted an immediate ceasefire. Their high command refused to discuss the details of the battle. But those who had seen the Revenant class firsthand were now among the most fearful commanders in the universe. In the halls of power, paranoia set in. If humanity truly possessed such a weapon, what else were they hiding? Would they use it against others? Could anyone stop them if they did? Several alliances, once neutral or hostile, rushed to establish diplomatic ties with Earth. Suddenly, humanity was no longer seen as an easy target for conquest or manipulation. Now, they were a mystery, one that no one dared to provoke. But the biggest question remained unanswered. Where had the Revenant class gone? Even with the most advanced tracking technology in the galaxy, no one could find it. It had vanished without a trace, just as it had appeared. No transmissions, no signals, nothing. Some believed it was waiting, watching the stars, ready to return if humanity ever faced another impossible war. Others feared something far worse. That the Revenant class was not just a warship, that it was alive, and that, one day, it might decide that humanity was no longer worth saving. The fear did not fade with time. Across the galaxy, whispers of the Revenant-class warship spread through military councils, intelligence agencies, and clandestine meetings. The battle where it had appeared was analyzed in excruciating detail, but no one, not even humanity itself, had a definitive answer to the questions that haunted the minds of strategists and scientists alike. What was it? Where did it come from? And, most disturbingly, would it return? The Kavar's desperate investigation, a threat they couldn't comprehend. The Kavar Dominion, humiliated by their defeat, reacted in a way that many had expected, with paranoia and secrecy. Their military intelligence branch launched a massive covert operation to gather every possible piece of data on the Revenant class. Surveillance probes were dispatched to every Terran-controlled system. Deep cover operatives infiltrated human research facilities, and bribery attempts skyrocketed as the Kavar sought anything at all, that could explain how humanity had gained such an impossible warship. But the more they searched, the less they found. Instead of classified blueprints, prototype schematics, or research logs detailing the ship's origins, they encountered a void. There were no records in human databases. No military scientists boasting about advanced stealth technology. No admirals claiming they had deployed a secret weapon. It was as if the Revenant class didn't exist. This realization caused a schism in the Kivar High Command. Some, particularly the war-hardened admirals, believed that humanity was hiding their most dangerous project, something they had secretly developed for centuries. But others, those who understood the implications of a ship that could appear and disappear at will, a ship that left no technological trace, came to a much darker conclusion. If the humans created this, then why don't they know what it is? This single question shattered the confidence of the Kaver Dominion, because it meant that even humanity didn't control the Revenant class, and if humanity wasn't controlling it, then what was? The Terran government, silence, and a single order on Earth. The reaction was just as unsettling. The United Terran Military Council, a body of the most powerful military officials and intelligence leaders, held an emergency meeting within the Iron Vault, a classified facility buried beneath the surface of Mars. The discussion was simple. Was the Revenant class a threat or a protector? For days, they debated every possibility. Some argued that the warship had saved humanity by sheer chance, that its appearance was nothing more than a cosmic anomaly. Others pointed to the way it had targeted only the Kivar, never turning its devastating firepower against a single human vessel. But one disturbing fact stood above all. Humanity had not summoned it. It had arrived on its own. No command signals. No activation codes. No military distress calls that could explain its presence. It had simply appeared. One of the highest-ranking generals, a hardened strategist named Elias Greystone, proposed an extreme solution. "We should find it," he said. "If we don't understand this ship, we can't predict its actions. It's too dangerous to leave unchecked. We need to locate it, contain it, if possible. Learn what it is." But the others weren't so sure. "You assume it can be contained," another officer countered. "You assume it can be controlled, but what if it doesn't want to be?" The debate raged for hours, but in the end, the decision was made. Every intelligence agency under the Terran banner was issued a single, classified order. Do not pursue. Not a single effort would be made to track the Revenant class. No satellites dedicated to scanning for its return. No intelligence missions to recover its technology. No attempts to locate where it had gone. As far as the official records were concerned, the Revenant class had never existed. And if it returned, then, and only then, would humanity decide what to do next. Ancient warnings, theory or truth. While the military and intelligence branches remained frozen in uncertainty, xenoarchaeologists, scientists who studied the remains of long-dead civilizations, began uncovering something disturbing. Across multiple planets, in ruins that had belonged to civilizations that had vanished long before humanity reached the stars, strange inscriptions were discovered. Most were too eroded to translate. But a few were clear enough to decipher, and what they described was unsettling. One inscription, found deep in the ruins of the Drathan homeworld, read, "Beware the shadows between stars. Beware the ones that watch but do not speak. Beware the vessels that do not belong to this universe." Another, located on an uninhabited planet in the Urax Nebula, was even more direct. "They do not serve. They do not conquer. They do not answer. They are not machines, but something beyond. If you see one, do not follow, do not seek, do not call." And then, the most chilling discovery of all, a single word inscribed on a massive ancient monument, orbiting a dead sun, written in a language that no living species spoke, yet one that, inexplicably, the translation software recognized. One word, repeated over and over in countless variations: Revenant. The unsettling realization: what if it isn't the first? A terrifying idea began to take shape. What if the Revenant class wasn't unique? What if there were others, hidden in the void, waiting in the dark between galaxies? Had the Revenant class been watching humanity all along? Had it chosen to act only when it saw fit, or worse? Had it acted before, not just for humanity, but for other civilizations in the past? And if so, what had happened to those civilizations when the Revenant class no longer found them worthy? No one knew the answers. And perhaps, no one was meant to. The unsettling possibility that the Revenant class was neither human-made nor entirely unique spread across the galaxy like a silent plague. The Kavar Dominion remained paralyzed, unable to decide whether to retaliate against humanity or to avoid provoking the unknown force that had annihilated their fleets. Meanwhile, within human space, debates raged between the military, intelligence agencies, and the scientific community. Was this enigmatic warship a lost relic of a forgotten era, a rogue AI beyond the control of any species, or something even more incomprehensible? The truth remained elusive. But for those who dared to dig deeper, the fear only grew. The unsolved mysteries, the ship that defied all logic. The Revenant class had not simply dominated the battlefield. It had rewritten what was thought possible in space warfare. Experts across multiple disciplines attempted to deconstruct its tactical behavior, but every analysis led to the same disturbing conclusion. The warship had not fought like a machine. Yes, its actions were precise. Yes, its firepower was devastating. But it did not follow predictable patterns like an AI-driven fleet. It didn't rely on calculated exchanges of fire like human warships. It fought like a predator. Its movements were instinctive, almost organic in the way it maneuvered through enemy formations, weaving between capital ships and striking with surgical brutality. It didn't waste energy. It didn't hesitate. It anticipated enemy reactions before they happened, something that even the most advanced AI struggled to do. And then, there was the way it vanished. The most advanced hyperspace tracking arrays across the sector should have detected any trace of the ship's movement. Yet the moment the last Kavar ship was reduced to drifting wreckage, the Revenant class was simply gone. No jump signatures, no residual energy, not even a gravitational ripple. It was as if the warship had never been there at all. The secret archives, evidence of something older. While the military and intelligence agencies kept the Revenant class under strict classified silence, the truth was that this was not the first time humanity had encountered the unexplainable. Deep within the solar archive, a classified vault of lost or suppressed knowledge, a handful of old reports resurfaced. Reports dismissed as errors, hallucinations, or fabrications at the time. One report, dated nearly 4 centuries ago, came from a long-abandoned Terran colony on Tau Cetia 4. The planet was mysteriously evacuated overnight, with no records explaining why. The report, written by an unidentified exoplanet researcher, described an event that bore eerie similarities to the Revenant class. We detected something massive moving in orbit. It had no emissions, no gravity signature, just a black silhouette against the stars. When we aimed our instruments at it, they simply failed. No readings, no data, as if it wasn't real. Then, it moved, and for a brief moment I saw something impossible. The hull didn't reflect light. It absorbed it, like a hole in space. And I swear I felt it looking at me. That was the last entry in the report. The colony was abandoned shortly after. There were other fragments, other sightings, buried within forgotten military logs. Strange objects appearing near dying battlefields, ships that were attacked by something unseen, wreckage that showed no sign of known weapons fire, but had been reduced to atomized debris. No one had ever connected these events before. No one had ever realized that they might have all pointed to the same phenomenon, until now. The Kavars' final decision, a war they couldn't win. While humanity debated whether to seek out or ignore the Revenant class, the Kavar Dominion was running out of options. Their war council, consisting of their most powerful admirals, warlords, and strategists, was torn apart by conflicting views. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Humanity was weaker than the Kavar, in sheer numbers. If they struck quickly, they could crush Terran space before the Revenant class returned. But others saw a much darker reality. The Revenant class had not defended Earth. It had not protected any particular system or acted as a deterrent before the battle. It had only appeared when the war was nearly won, when the Kavar's dominance was undeniable, And then it had eradicated them. What if the Revenant class only intervened when one side gained absolute superiority? What if it was not on humanity's side, but rather on the side of balance? If that was true, then wiping out the humans might be the very action that summoned it again. The War Council knew one thing. They could not risk facing it a second time. Thus, the Kivar made an unthinkable decision. They withdrew. An armistice was quietly proposed to the United Terran Military Council. No apologies, no admissions of defeat, just a simple offer. The war was over. And so, without another shot fired, the Kivar retreated beyond the Outer Rim, abandoning every conquered system they had taken from humanity. It was the fastest war-ending negotiation in recorded history. But the Terrans knew the truth. The Kivar had not surrendered to them. They had surrendered to something else. The unanswered questions. Who really commands the void? In the months that followed, the Revenant class did not return. No new sightings. No new appearances. It remained nothing more than a ghost story. But for those who had seen it firsthand, for those who had watched it dismantle an empire in minutes, the question lingered. Was it truly gone? Or was it merely waiting? Theories circulated within the deepest corners of intelligence networks, whispered in the halls of secret research facilities, and among the highest-ranking officials. Had the Revenant class been the last surviving remnant of an ancient war? Was it an autonomous weapon, still following orders from a long-dead master? Or worse, had it been deciding who deserved to survive all along, and if so, was it the only one? As the galaxy moved on, as governments rebuilt and soldiers returned home, only one truth remained undeniable. The Revenant class should not have existed. And yet, when it did, it had dominated the battlefield like nothing before. The Revenant class had vanished, but its presence never faded from the minds of those who had witnessed its wrath. Across the galaxy, fear, speculation, and conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to control the narrative, while the United Terran Military Council quietly restructured its forces, preparing for a future war they might never understand. Yet, deep within the shadows of classified intelligence networks, an unsettling realization emerged. Humanity was not alone in its fear. The Revenant class had not simply dismantled the Kivar Dominion's forces. It had done something far more terrifying. It had sent a message. And now, the galaxy was listening. The Galactic Whispers. Fear of the unknown. For centuries, humanity had been an underdog in the galactic hierarchy. The Kivar Dominion, the Zalari, Syndicate, the Vrite Consortium. Powerful civilizations had long regarded Earth as an upstart species, too young to be taken seriously. Even after the war, humanity was still recovering, still rebuilding its fleets, still seen as weaker than the empires that had dominated for millennia. But the Revenant class had changed everything. Diplomatic channels were overwhelmed with urgent requests for meetings. Neutral factions that had once ignored humanity now sought alliances, eager to be on the same side as the species that had somehow unleashed a force capable of crushing an empire. Even more alarming were the encrypted transmissions intercepted from other alien nations. Conversations between warlords, high-ranking officials, and intelligence operatives revealed a chilling pattern. The Revenant class was not the first warship of its kind. Across the galaxy, whispers of similar spectral vessels had existed for thousands of years, not legends, not myths, actual, recorded encounters. But every civilization that had faced one of these ships had either been erased from history or forced into silence. This revelation sent shockwaves through human leadership. If there were others, what was their purpose? Had they been built by an ancient species long extinct? Were they a remnant of a forgotten war, still enforcing some long-dead empire's will? Or was there something else entirely at play? The lost data. Fragments of a forbidden past in an act of desperation. The Terran Intelligence Bureau authorized an operation so secretive that it was only known to a handful of officials. A team of elite cyber-intelligence specialists was tasked with hacking into the most classified databases of alien civilizations. Their mission? To uncover any trace of historical records that might explain the origin of the Revenant class. What, they found was far worse than they had imagined. Records were missing. Entire centuries of data had been wiped from existence. Galactic superpowers that prided themselves on their meticulous historical archives had vast portions of their past erased with surgical precision. But amidst the data fragmentation, they recovered one chilling artifact: a fragmented transmission, buried under layers of encryption in an old Kivar military database. The transmission was not of Kivar origin. It predated their civilization. It was over 17,000 years old, and it contained one message. They are not ships. They are the sentence, the judgment, the end. When the balance is lost, they come. No signature, no origin, just those words. The message, crude as it was, carried an unmistakable meaning. These warships were not built for conquest. They were not machines of war in the traditional sense. They were executioners. The unanswered call. Who was the enemy? If the Revenant class was a form of judgment, then the obvious question arose: who or what were they judging? Had the Kivar Dominion been their true target all along? Or had their crime been merely gaining too much power? And if that was the case, what did it mean for humanity? The United Terran Military Council convened in total secrecy, debating whether to actively search for the Revenant class or to pretend it never existed. But one undeniable fact remained. Someone, something, was still out there. It was not just the Revenant class that humanity had to fear. It was what might come next. The realization sparked a silent arms race across multiple species. Some sought to develop countermeasures. Others wanted to make contact, believing that if they understood these entities, they could negotiate their survival. The Terran Intelligence Bureau considered every possibility. Was there a way to summon the Revenant class? Was it truly autonomous, or was something else commanding it? Had humanity unintentionally become its next target by surviving the Kivar invasion? These questions had no answers. Not yet. But then, something changed. The unscheduled distress signal. A new warship appears. 12 months after the Revenant class vanished, a deep space distress beacon activated on the fringes of human space. It was detected by a lone scout ship patrolling the unclaimed regions beyond known borders. The signal's origin was an uncharted system, far from any trade routes or established colonies. The scout vessel's crew had no reason to believe it was anything more than a stranded vessel or a pirate trick, until they got closer. What they found should not have existed. Drifting within the system's asteroid belt was a warship unlike any other. It was not human. It was not Kivar. It did not match the profile of any known species. And yet, its design bore uncanny similarities to the Revenant class. But this ship was damaged. Scars of battle marred its hull. Its outer plating was shattered in places, revealing exotic materials that defied analysis. It was powered down, silent, with no signs of life. It was an empty corpse of a ship, waiting. The scout team knew they had two choices. They could report their findings and risk igniting a conflict over its ownership. Or they could board it, uncover its secrets, and learn the truth before anyone else. They made their choice. As they approached, their sensors picked up one final, terrifying detail. There were no life signs aboard the vessel, but there was a faint, repeating signal coming from within. A single phrase, broadcasted on a frequency that no human ship had ever used before. It was in no known language, but somehow, the crew understood it. Do not awaken the others. The message echoed through the scout ship's communication systems, yet no one knew how they could understand it. It wasn't a language they had encountered before. It wasn't even structured like a conventional form of communication, and yet, the meaning was clear. A warning, or perhaps a desperate plea. Do not awaken the others. The crew sat in stunned silence as their instruments struggled to interpret the nature of the transmission. It wasn't a typical distress signal. The repeating phrase carried an odd, almost harmonic frequency, as if it wasn't merely a message, but a command. Then, a new discovery sent a chill down their spines. The ship wasn't completely dead. Somewhere deep inside the vessel, a power signature flickered, weak but unmistakable. Something inside was still active. The decision: to board or to run. The scout crew faced a dilemma that could change the fate of humanity. If they boarded the ship, they risked waking something that should have stayed forgotten. If they left, they risked another faction finding it first, and humanity might never learn the truth. Every instinct screamed at them to leave. But curiosity, ambition, and a sense of duty overpowered their fear. Equipped with full environmental suits and high-frequency energy weapons, the team launched from their scout ship and entered the drifting behemoth. Inside, the air was thick, stale, and unmoving. Yet there was no decay, no biological matter. The corridors were alien, vast, and eerily symmetrical, as though the ship had been grown rather than built. Their lights swept across strange markings on the walls, pulsating faintly, like veins under the surface of a living organism. Then, they found the first body. A dead pilot, or something else. Or, it was slumped over what appeared to be a command interface, but the entity inside the suit was not human. It was skeletal, its armor corroded beyond recognition. Its organic components had long since rotted away, leaving only a fractured exoskeleton, fused into the console. But there was something wrong. Despite what seemed like thousands of years of decay, its fingertips were embedded into the controls. It wasn't just sitting there, it had died fighting to keep something contained. The realization sent a wave of unease through the team. What had this being been trying to prevent? And more importantly, was it still here? The awakening. Something was watching as they moved deeper. Instruments picked up fluctuations in the ship's power grid. The weak energy signal they had detected earlier was strengthening. Something inside the ship was waking up. One of the crew members, scanning with an advanced biometric sensor, suddenly froze in place. The scanner had picked up a life sign, not the remains of the long-dead pilot. Not a residual energy echo, a single active presence, directly below them. Then, before they could react, the ship spoke. Not through words, not through any recognizable frequency, but through their minds. "Why have you come?" It wasn't a voice. It was a pressure, a thought that didn't belong to them, like an ancient whisper crawling into their consciousness. The team staggered back, weapons raised, instincts screaming at them to run. But the presence didn't attack. Instead, a section of the floor dissolved, revealing a chamber below. Inside was something even the most advanced Terran scientists couldn't have imagined. The Forgotten Machine. A living warship? Suspended in the chamber was an object unlike anything in recorded history. It was an orb, nearly 3 meters in diameter, constructed of a material that defied physics as they understood it. It shifted, pulsed, as though aware of their presence. Around it, alien symbols burned into existence, forming patterns that moved too fast for human eyes to follow. The team's lead scientist, despite his terror, activated a universal translation AI, hoping to make sense of the patterns. The program struggled. Processing speed slowed to a crawl. But after a moment, the symbols resolved into something recognizable. A warning. Not just for them, but for humanity itself. If you remain, they will come. The ship had been abandoned. For a reason. The Kever Dominion had been an obstacle, not the real target. And now the Revenant class wasn't just a single anomaly. It was a beacon. Something far older, something beyond their understanding, had been waiting for a signal, and humanity had triggered it. The escape and a final revelation alarms erupted throughout the ship. The energy levels, once dormant, spiked. Systems rebooted. The ship was waking up. The team ran, barely making it back to their shuttle as tremors shook the entire vessel. As their engines roared to life, the alien warship began to change. Its once dormant form stirred, reshaping itself, as though preparing for something. Then, as the scout ship blasted away at full speed, they witnessed the final horror. The orb, the entity, the intelligence, whatever it was, began transmitting. Not to Earth, not to the surviving Kever warlords, but somewhere deep in uncharted space. Judgment has been delayed, but they know. Then, without warning, the ship vanished. No explosion, no warp signature. It simply ceased to exist. The scout crew, still shaking, knew one thing for certain. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. The aftermath, humanity's final choice back on Earth. The classified report sent shockwaves through military leadership. The Revenant class had been the beginning of something much larger. If they ignored the warning, they risked facing an enemy beyond comprehension. If they pursued the truth, they might uncover something that was never meant to be found. And worst of all, if the others truly existed, if these mythical warships were part of something greater, then humanity had already been marked. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness of space, something had turned its attention toward Earth. And the next time it came, it would not be a war. It would be a reckoning.